This is the story of how I set back my opera career twice in one day, and along the way gained the respect of at least one colleague. I hope I can get through this in one take. You'll see why, but hopefully you'll not hear why. For a substantial part of my adult life, I thought of myself primarily as a classical singer. I had sung in choir in high school as a tenor, and then taken years of voice lessons both in college and afterward, and eventually had a minor opera career. You can see some evidence from this money-losing effort in the earliest video posted to my channel. One of the roles I sang was in a French opera that had been largely forgotten, and was being put on for the first time on the West Coast by a small company in a big theater. I was cast in the secondary tenor role, a fellow who doesn't get killed or have really anything very upsetting happen to him. He sings a sweet and harmless aria and takes part in a couple of ensembles. He doesn't serve much of a dramatic purpose, but he gets a hummable tune. My wife, at the time girlfriend, Monica, was in the show also, with a role of comparable size, although she looked much prettier in hers. She played the proprietress of a saloon in old Louisiana, a very mezzo-soprano part. Mine and most other roles were double cast, which means that I was scheduled to sing some of the performances, and another tenor would sing the others. This arrangement is used for various reasons, but with small companies, one of the main reasons is to have someone available to cover in case of illness, or a departure from the production in a fit of rage. I did that once. When there is no budget to pay a cover to learn the part, a useful incentive since they get no guarantee of a performance, double casting can get you two more experienced performers rather than a cover who may be untested. Anyway, the red team cast member is supposed to be available to show up and perform with the blue cast if something happens to the person they share the role with. This will become relevant in just a moment. While we were in rehearsals for this show, and completely unrelated to this show, I was lucky to secure an audition with an important conductor. I had been doing performances with his chorus master, who recommended that this big-name conductor hear me. The audition, as it happened, was scheduled for the morning of one of my performance days for the French opera. Well, singing for 10 minutes in the morning isn't going to spoil your voice for a secondary role later in the day, so I didn't try to juggle the performance schedule. I woke up that day with a deep voice, which is great if you want to sound authoritative, but far from great if you want to sing a lot of high notes. I suspected that I was catching a cold. The audition was coming up quickly. I didn't have time to think about what to do, so I didn't think. Surprisingly, this turned out to be not the optimal choice. The audition didn't go well. I felt like I was shouting. On the long drive home, I was pretty miserable, and now it was obvious that I was coming down with a cold, and that I'd already burned through what little tenor voice I had for that day. I texted my opposite cast tenor to tell him he'd have to perform in my place, but you see, he had accepted a conflicting gig that would have him all the way across L.A., a paying gig, so he couldn't be there to save the day. Regrettably, of course. So when we reached the theater, I went straight to our conductor. "I'm very sorry, but I'm sick. I don't have any high notes. I might be able to hide in the ensembles, but there's no way I can make it through the aria." He said, "We have to have that piece. It's the most memorable melody in the show. It sits pretty high. Can you sing it an octave down?" I agreed to try, at least. I went through it in my head while getting in costume and makeup, deciding which notes I would sing as written and which I would sing lower. Singing your part an octave down is not unusual in rehearsal, where it's called marking. Singing out with your full voice and trying to sound convincing an octave down is not normal because it sounds strenuous and just dumb. Halfway through the show, the moment arrived for my big solo. I was nervous, more so than usual. I sang it an octave down, but with a few notes where they would normally be. I made it through, didn't get lost, didn't run out of voice. The conductor was happy. The audience didn't know. They had just heard the music sung as it was never intended. The rest of the cast did fine, and the performance made it to the end safely. The young lovers expired in the parching desert of Louisiana, apparently. After the show, I learned something I'm glad I hadn't known before. A reviewer for an opera publication had been in the audience and would be reviewing the performance. A friend had asked them what they thought of me. An average base, nothing special, why? Of course, when the writer found out I was a tenor, there was at least some grudging appreciation, but of course, there's no way to extrapolate what sort of tenor to make of someone singing very low, so mercifully I was left out of the review. Had I been on that morning and not sick, would the famous conductor have given me small parts with bigger companies? Or opportunities to learn as a paid cover with these companies? It would have led to something more? And had I been on that evening, would a positive review have done something for me? Maybe. Probably. Who can say? Many months later, I was performing a role in Tosca with another company, this time in an actual desert. Before our tech rehearsal, I think it was, one of the other cast members said, "Hey, I really admire what you did," in the French thing, which caught me off guard. He explained, "When you sang your part an octave down." What? Really? He said that I had done it despite it being unsuitable for my voice, and even having people think I was an entirely different voice type, something that's not helpful to your career. To him, it was an unselfish act, a favor to the rest of the cast, who would thus have the least possible disturbance to the flow of their performance. I had put that day out of my mind, believing it was all an embarrassment and that nothing good had come of it. But something good did come of it, and his saying this then made me more conscious of wanting to show loyalty to people you work with, whether it's on stage or in an office or behind a counter. I saw that people sometimes do appreciate your extra effort, and it can mean more to them than you could have guessed. By the way, because the previous video in this playlist, the one about special candy, had so far accrued the fewest views of any video I've ever posted, I thought I would double down and make another just like it, an understated story time with a weird title. This is because I know better than the audience. And why this story? I began to feel sick a couple of days ago, and I wondered if it would show in my voice when I went to make my daily video, and so it brought to mind the day I was sick and tried to push through it with my voice. Then I took 2.5 hours to write this script over 3 days. So much for daily video. Hey, I have a cold. I blame the brain fog. Thanks for watching, and for hanging in there along with my voice. Be seeing you.